All right. Objections? Hearing no objections, the motion passes with general consent. We're going to go ahead and move on to the introduction of the SGA budget. So I will turn it over to Scott, and I'm going to try and project the budget up on my screen right now.
No, I got it.
Got it? Oh, big ballin'. The power of WebEx. All right, the floor is yours.
All right, so the budget has unanimously passed the SGA Senate with no edits. So I will be presenting the exact same thing as I presented to them. As I get started. In making the budget, Francis and I had a few goals in mind. We had to decrease spending because we had a decrease in revenue. We did not want to change any of the charter org spending. This includes weekly and the finance board pot. Though we did consolidate our SEB's sponsorships into their general line item. We reevaluated co-sponsorships, trying to kind of step back from things where we were just paying for programs put on by departments without really any SGA involvement. Trying to expand our involvement in the partnerships that we have. Also changed the internal spending to be closer to actuals. Things are budgeted based on what we're actually spending. And we had the creation of some new partnerships, specifically for E&E, where other departments will be providing funding and support for that program in the fall. You guys have any questions?
Your audio is kind of...
There's not much I can do about that, unfortunately, so let me know if anything is unclear throughout, Ryan. Or if I have to repeat anything.
Looks like Nithya can't connect to the sound chat.
Should I wait for her?
It looks like it's internet issue. What she said.
So the issue with WebEx is that it's a much more robust platform than Google Hangouts. That being said, if you guys are currently using it on a browser, I would highly recommend taking this time to download the desktop version of it, because your connection will go through a lot smoother. And I'll go ahead and type this in the chat for Nithya as well. But if you haven't done that, I would recommend doing that now. And then if you have to break during the meeting to leave the desktop version and go, or leave the web browser version and go onto the desktop version, I would do that now, because it's going to make things a lot easier.
Hey, Liam, this is Candace. Are we recording this?
Yes, this is being recorded
Perfect.
On my end.
Right. Oh, I see it right here. Thank you.
Should I continue?
Yes, go ahead and continue.
So the first part of the budget is just like the overall spending. Last year we had $1,113,000 in budget expenses. That was budgeted for a little over 1.5 or 1.05% of the actual revenues. This year we lowered that, so there is precedent for overspending by the amount that we are. Are there any questions about that? Administrative expenses make up about 17.5% of our budget. This is kept at the same amount as last year, except for a small cut to the advisor line item, or advisor line item, which was reduced at Candace's request. We do expect about a 2% cost of living increase to the salaries that we help support. But given as this already over budgeted by a little bit, David Roy suggested that I keep the overall amount the same. That's what we did. The vast majority of our spending goes to support student organizations, the charter organizations I talked about at the beginning. Not really touch these amounts except for consolidating SEB's money. This is broken up as stated here. With the 20% left of our budget, that's all for internal spending. We had to decrease leadership stipends by 0.5 credit hours. That includes the top 4 executive members, leadership of the finance board and the Senate, Other positions got a credit hour increase, including senator representatives, election board, secretaries, and there were no changes in the stipends except for the small credit hour increase for appointed officers. And that is a net negative of about $7,000. As I said earlier, the line items were moved closer to actual spending amounts. We increased the marketing fund to encourage the continued use of the Retriever Weekly, Common Vision, and just more marketing because we want to make sure people are going to our events and knowing what we're doing. There are no major purchases planned for next year, so office supplies and office updates are cut. And he is getting money from outside of the SGA, so take that into account when we're going over the actual spreadsheet. And there are also leftover materials for E&E and other internal programming ready for next year. So I'm going to bring up the actual budget. You guys can also find this in the drive as well if you would like to go through it yourself. I'll let you guys scroll through and see if you have any questions.
Questions regarding the budgets? Make sure you guys are looking through clearly. This is our operating budget for next year. Is there legislation for the budget?
There is.
Where can I find that?
I emailed it to you Monday after it passed.
Ooh. I
Also have it. Well,
have the draft of 6 of the budget, and I have the budget proposal presentation. I don't have anything else from you.
everything regarding the budget is in my folder in the executive under budget for Insula.
All right.
It's actual legislation. Attachment A, spreadsheet.
All right. Well, first of all, I hate everything, and especially the Senate Secretary right about now. But you passed 2 JL-18s.
I don't understand.
So I'm looking at the approval of the amended Retriever MOU that was passed by the Senate, and it's also listed as JL-18-1920.
This is passed before now. I think this has precedent.
Sorry, say again?
This was passed before the committee is, so I think this is correct in there as well.
All right. Well, then the Retriever's not getting passed today. We have to send that back to the Senate.
We can pass it here and then just throw it back to the Senate.
Yeah, well, no, we can pass the budget here, but we won't be able to pass the MOUs today, which is unfortunate.
I think it's fine to send it back to them and be like, you need to redo this.
Yeah.
I think that's perfectly appropriate. Especially, is Patrick on this call?
He was invited. He's not currently on.
Okay, yeah, especially since Patrick's not here and he was the author of that, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, I would just send it back to the Senate.
So don't worry. Yeah, we will make sure that all the language in there will be good. It's more so a clerical error in the fact that we can't have passed 2 legislations of the same type, or the same name.
Yeah, no worries. Just keep me updated on when I should come back.
Yeah, I mean, you should be good in terms of on the Senate side. The Senate Speaker will reach out to you when
Okay.
it'll come up, but it'll very much just be approving of the amendments that we made and then set forth. But for now, let's go ahead and go on the budget then. Does anyone have any questions for Scott about the budget before we move into discussion? All right. No questions. We go ahead and move into discussion of Scott. Who would like to get us started?
Oh my gosh. Well,
Can everybody mute their mics and I'll talk?
hello?
Hello? Would anyone like to get us started on this discussion?
Was I muted the whole time?
All right, so the way we're going to do this is if you would like to say something, please indicate so in the chat and then unmute yourself so that we can create a line and a queue. Does anyone want to say anything? Or are you all ready to pass this legislation?
Does everybody like the budget? Does anybody have any questions?
If he has a question, go ahead.
Is anyone talking right now besides me? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
I believe right now Nithya is typing in her question.
Oh, okay. So no one was talking, Ryan. It was just quiet.
Correct. Nithya asked, so any money rolled over from these last few weeks goes straight into reserves? Question mark.
From a this is Candace. From a yes. Short answer is yes. Now hopefully student orgs will be able to reschedule some stuff. And then use the money that was allocated to them. But any money that's not used that was allocated, yes, does roll to the reserves, as opposed to in fall where it rolls to a different part of the budget.
You can also see our reserves right here. We're currently at 356 thousand dollars in our reserve.
Understood. All right. Any more questions about the budget? When it comes to regarding clubs and stuff, that'll be handled during. Any questions about particular line items in the budget, changes that you don't agree with, questions you have about it? Discussion time for that. And put it in the chat if you have questions that.
Is everybody just like unclear on anything in general? Because this was just kind of harder to present without actually being in person. So I want to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. Just for like procedural stuff, the finance board can only up or down this budget. They can have individual item changes. So it's either all or nothing here.
All right. There are no responses in the chat and no further questions. We're going to go ahead and move in. Or for any background noise that you might hear, the Mamas boys are posted outside my apartment, letting in through my window. That being said, I'd like to introduce JL18 local legislation. I'd like to introduce JL 18-1920, approval of the FY20 student government budget.
Move to approve JL 18-1920.
Second.
All right. In terms of voting, although it's not going to be an official roll call vote, I am going to do a roll call to get your vote, since I won't be able to tell who is raising their hand. So when I call your name, unmute your mic and get. All right, ready? Ryan.
Yes.
Scott?
I vote in the affirmative.
Yep, got you, Ryan.
Okay.
Yeah, as well.
So yeah, when your name is called, indicate a yes or a no. Yes indicating a yes vote, and no indicating. Scott?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Abdullah? Abdullah?
Abdullah just texted. He says his Wi-Fi is out.
All right. You'll be listed as absent.
Can you text him to say to call in on the phone?
I will.
Thank you.
Let him know on that. In the meantime, Elise.
Yes. Yeah.
Ilsa?
Yes.
Nithya?
Yes.
All right. 7 yeses, 7 for, 0 against, none abstaining, 2 not present, and the motion carries. I'll find a better way of doing this. Sorry, guys. With that being said, the motion passes, and JL 18. Congratulations. You have your budget, Scott. All right. With that being said, we're going to down our agenda to the JL for the retriever. Although we know we're going to be making amendments to it to change housing information, I'll handle that at the end in procedural. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to Julie. Julia, you good?
Sorry. Yes.
Um,
I didn't hear your question.
So we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna handle all the administrative stuff in terms of the amendments to the legislation at the end. But for now, would you like to introduce your MOU for the retriever?
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Julia. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Retriever. There are some line items in the MOU that we signed with SGA last semester or last year that we aren't doing anymore. So there's hello, sorry.
Good, keep talking.
Okay. There's a specific line item that asked for us to increase the amount of money that we're offering freelance writers for special projects. And we haven't had any special projects, and we don't anticipate having any special projects for the rest of the semester. So I'm fairly sure that the MOU kind of encompasses that. Otherwise, I haven't seen the amendments yet. I'm only kind of off of what I talked with Patrick and Francis about at a meeting that we had about a month ago. And that was like the main line item that we were talking about. So yeah.
So does anybody have like comprehension of the MOU?
I didn't hear your question. I don't know if it was directed to me.
Just in like general, because personally I don't really understand what the purpose of the MOU is.
Oh, just explain what the MOU is. Okay. So the MOU was designed last year to I guess have us use more of our reserves and then boost stipends for writers and some of our new managerial positions like videography. And then just kind of like get everyone on the same like level playing field as far as stipends go and increase writer stipends. And then it also asked us to spend at least $1,000 in, I believe it was like capital equipment. I don't know. It was capital something, but we've spent way more than $1,000 in like extreme big purchases that will last us for a while. And it also asked us to spend at least 15% of our reserves by the end of this fiscal year. So hopefully we'll be on track for that. I'm only concerned about what's going to happen in the event that that online classes are extended beyond the 2 weeks that they're currently set for. So that's something that I was typing up an email to send to Scott, Francis, and Patrick just to talk about that in general, but if we can also discuss it now, because I don't know how that's going to go. And if we're online for a longer period than 2 weeks, that will definitely restrict the amount of purchases that we can make.
In general, do you see
I'm going to need you to type that one. We're going to. Do you see his question?
Yeah. I'm not sure, only because this is like an extreme situation that no one anticipated happening. So like, it's up to you guys. I mean, obviously I would, of course prefer that we just strike the MOU out of the sky, but that's not how the world works. So really we could just wait on it and see what happens. But I really don't know like what time you need this MOU like approved or changed or how that works.
Yeah, I think we need it approved before our budget for the FRB, simply because you're part of our line items, so the agreements need to be signed.
Yeah.
Question from Nithya.
I don't know for sure, but I can definitely get a number to you guys by the end of the day. Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Does my mic work at all? Because I just had something to acknowledge that.
Scott, I'll be honest with you, you're coming in like Optimus Prime. I'm only hearing every fifth word, and it's robotic as hell.
Oh, Scott. Does anyone have any thoughts on Scott's statement? In the chat?
If you have an answer or response, you can, if you'd like to say it, just say answer in the chat. If you want to type out your response, you're free to do that as well.
This is Candace. My understanding around the MOU and continuing the MOU is to partially make sure that there's some agreement around how and when the retriever is going to be spending down its I almost said endowment, don't we wish, its reserves, and trying to maintain a healthy balance and at the same time maintaining some of the commitments that they have made. I mean, the discussion around canceling the MOU is one to be had, but that's would have to be passed by both bodies to exit out of the MOU. Right now, the legislation that the Senate made is, as you know, is to alter the MOU. There has not been a conversation, or maybe there has, but there hasn't been legislation put forward to exit out of the MOU with the retriever. If that's something people in this body want to consider and then bring forward, you are free to do that. So, yeah.
Oh my God, Ryan.
Hello?
Yes. Ooh, go ahead, Scott.
May gave me her headphones.
Go ahead.
I think that the budget is kind of a more effective tool than the MOU, but at the same time, I don't really think that we should be managing the retriever's internal reserves. I think we just stay at the constant amount of $60,000, kind of how we do with SEB, that allows kind of for the separation, but also the conversation to take place every year rather than kind of making a contract.
Julia, I think given the circumstances, and anyone on the finance board can correct me if I'm making an assumption that is incorrect, that the finance board, this body, would be sensitive to your ability to meet the terms of the MOU given what's happening, right? And if I think the most important part is to say, or is to be able to recognize if y'all have made a good faith effort to meet it, given the circumstances. as the SGA advisor, that would be my advice. If it were ever a question as to if you weren't able to meet the terms of the MOU this year, that because say the rest of the semester goes online, you're not doing any print issues, and so then your budget and your revenues are impacted. That for this body and for Senate to be extremely sensitive to the situation we all find ourselves in, and to extend grace. That would be my advice.
Yeah, do you want me to like start putting something together? Like I can get the percent number to everyone by like the end of the day. But do you want me to start putting something together about like in the event that we are online for the rest of the semester, like put something together that says this is what we were planning to do, this is what we've done, this is what we would do under normal operating conditions, just so I mean, I don't know.
It's up to the body.
Yeah. It's a determination of whether or not right now this board wants to. Oh my God. I think right now it's a determination of whether or not this board is deciding to not proceed with the legislation based on this MOU and instead prep new legislation just to cancel it, or if we just want to pass through the legislation on this MOU and then look at canceling it in the future. What are your thoughts on that before I do a straw poll for the body?
Yeah, I mean, we're fine with like playing within the rules of the MOU. So I mean, if it's really whatever's easier for you, I'm not like too concerned. I mean, like I am concerned, but we can have like what if conversations like later when the ifs happen, you know? So if it's easier to just talk about what it is as it stands and just kind of go forward as if things will return to normal, then that's fine. And I mean, we're continuing to work to like meet the terms of the MOU, so it's not like we're like acting like it doesn't exist or anything. So.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and go into a quick straw poll and determination of what we want to do now in terms of, and if anyone has any additional suggestions, please let me know. But I believe the two options we have going forward are to pass through this JL, and then look at changing the particulars of it later, or just simply not passing through this JL right now and instead prepping legislation to just cancel it later. But the question is, do we want to just pass this through now or not? If the goal is to cancel it later, it'd be advantageous to not make changes to it just to cancel it. So option A would be passing the JL and looking at continued modification of the MOU. Option 2 is going to be cancel or not passing this JL and look at legislation to cancel the MOU. So I should have the ability to send a poll. Hey, God, I love this system already. Poll questions, multiple line children.
If you
Can
click
I
on the
say some other
dots,
stuff
it says
before you do the
polling.
poll?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna make the poll while you're doing that.
So, as I said earlier, I just kind of want out of the MOU, but I would want to wait for Patrick to explain his reasoning and his thoughts on it before I cast my vote either way, because Patrick made it and has feelings for his position, so I would want to hear what the purpose of the MOU is, why we should have this in the first place, so I can make an informed decision.
All right, does anyone, if we can get Patrick on the call right now? If
I'll text
possible,
him.
yeah, if possible, could someone reach out to him? And then in the poll, the question is going to be cancel the MOU or not, and I'll add in those options.
the number that he has to call in on?
You would call in at 202-860-2110, and I have the access code. It is 730-792-430.
Could you type that in the chat?
Give you an F in the chat. I'm typing it in right now.
Can y'all hear me?
Hello, Patrick.
Hey, what's going on?
Welcome. Sorry to bother you while I'm sure you are relaxing and enjoying your extended spring break. But we have questions for you regarding the JL that was passed yesterday in regards to the Retriever MOU.
Yeah, of course. What's up?
I'm going to go ahead and push over to Scott. Scott is the first question, and then from there, I'll assign out if anyone else has any additionals. So, Scott, go ahead.
Can you just explain the reasoning of having an MOU, what it does, and just like why we have a contract with the Retriever in general?
I really can't speak to why Colin and Brenda made that MOU. This is just to kind of amend it. In all fairness, like I really wasn't part of those meetings at that time. From what I understand from just meeting with Julia, of course, like the whole point of that was to kind of drive down their reserve budget. As you can see, like they weren't really able to do that, but they have been increasing their spending by like, I don't know the exact numbers, but the numbers are available on that amendment, on their proposed budget, showing like that they've increased their spending on a lot of like the things we've asked them to do. Again, I forget the exact specifics, but that's sort of like the background behind this amendment. I can't really speak to why we had the MOU in the first place, other than just their reserves were operating at way over capacity.
What I was saying to the board is that if there's not really any purpose to have an MOU, I think it would be better just to cancel the MOU and get out and kind of be like laissez-faire. Like we can ask the Retriever to pay people more if they have the money to do so, but I don't know, especially like about having a contract, especially with like situations such as this where they would be more hard pressed to meet the MOU. So do you think there should be an MOU in general, and if so, for what reason?
Yeah, I'm like, no, I don't necessarily think there should be an MOU. But we were sort of, I think the reason that we were looking at an amendment instead of canceling it was just to kind of, I mean, I don't know, try to be respectful of the previous administration, and maybe there are reasons that we weren't familiar with. But yeah, I mean, I have no problem at all with just kind of scrapping that MOU, because it is sort of micromanaging, in my opinion. Like the Retrievers, like, I mean, their salaries literally, which sort of is not our job, and not in the purview of the SGA to kind of be making those decisions for the Retriever. So yeah, I think that if that's sort of an opinion of someone on the finance board, then I would have no problem with getting rid of that MOU.
Julia, what are your thoughts?
I just put in the chat, I really don't know any like concrete reasons why Colin or Brenda wanted the MOU other than to, I think after they proposed to cut our funding, we threw enough of a tantrum that the MOU seemed like the best option to like ask, like, to get us to drive down our reserves while also not like infringing on the money you guys give us and the relationship that we have. But Candace might be able to like speak more about that. Because I only had one meeting with them, or one meeting after everything was kind of proposed, and Colin called me before the SGA budget like officially dropped. So I'm like kind of just in the dark as everyone else is. But my understanding was that it was to drive down our reserves.
Hi, this is Candace. Yeah, I'd say that's an accurate assessment. Colin did a lot of information gathering around how much was in SGA's reserves, how much was in the Retriever's reserves, how much was in SEB's reserves, to be able to, so that he and Carly could work on creating an adequate budget for this for FY21. Where are we in? FY20. And their concerns were around the reserves and how it had been increasing over time, and whether or not that was if that was fiscally responsible on SGA's part to continue to give money to the Retriever if they were continuing to sock away more and more money in their reserves, which is where the let's cut the Retriever came from. And then, as Julia said, through conversations with the Retriever, really came to some agreements around how could the Retriever spend down its reserves? How could they do it to benefit students, and to continue to be fiscally responsible with the money that comes from student fees? I know that you all get money from from advertisements and things like that, which other orgs, I mean, like SEB gets some, but they're typically losing money on stuff. So that's sort of my understanding of Colin and Carly and Verinda's rationale around the MOU. And you are all free to do what you want.
All right. Does anyone have any more questions for Patrick and or Julia and or Candace?
Yeah, do we know like how that played out this year, Julia, or anybody else in the?
Like what do you mean, like how it played out? Like I can send you guys our budget, and like our projected spending and things like that, if that's what you're kind of looking for.
I mean, I was just curious, like if the MOU actually like changed the way you guys are spending money. I guess if we're going away from that, it doesn't really matter. But
I mean, it required us to like increase stipends for writers and some of our managers. So it did like increase the amount of like money we were using for stipends, and it also required us to make like larger purchases. So we purchased like a ton of new distribution bins. We're in the process of like switching them out around campus. We like switched over our printers. We're really investing in like videography and photography. So we're buying a lot of like cameras and stands and mics and things like that for them. So, I mean, it required us to spend money, so we're trying to invest it in like our brand and how we look around campus as much as possible. So yeah.
All right.
I kind of agree with what Patrick originally said, in that it's kind of micromanaging. And I think that the Retriever Weekly also has kind of self-interest to provide competitive stipends and upgrade their equipment and stuff. I'm pretty sure that as they have a whole team, they would be able to do that on their own. We obviously all want them to be giving competitive stipends and everything, but I don't know if an MOU is the best way to do that.
All right. Thank you, Patrick, for hopping on.
Hey guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to text me and I'll be sure to hop back on.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks, guys.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and reopen up the poll this time. poll. Please work. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and create the poll right now. So option A will be again to pass through this legislation and look at the continuation of having an MOU with the retriever. And option B will be to not pass this JL now and start looking at canceling the MOU for the future. So let me go ahead and put those in. Sorry, polls take a little bit of time to make. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up the poll. So it's open up for the next 5 minutes. Please slap in your answers at this time. Does anyone not have access to the poll or cannot see the poll? All right, has everyone voted?
Yes.
All right, Ryan, you voted? Just thumbs up. All right, Abdullah, you voted?
Yep, I voted.
All right, Elise, Ilsa, Nithya? Elise voted, Nithya voted, Elise?
Yeah, I voted.
All right, cool. Just making sure. Because we have the call-in users, I really should have checked the indication. Oh, hello. All right, so it looks like our straw poll going right now is looking at not passing the JL and canceling that. So with that being said, does anyone have any final discussion points, questions, comments, or concerns before we move into voting on the legislation?
Francis is trying to join real quick. She might have something to say.
Understood.
Carol's just excited that I'm working remotely again.
You can see the bunny ears.
Like I love this while we wait for Francis. When I first started, I did buy soda. When I first started working remotely, I had to go. We went on a trip, and I was working out of my hotel room, and Carol didn't want to be seen on the webcam, so literally like crawled across the floor to not be seen on the webcam, and all my coworkers were like, Carol doesn't have to do that. That's fine. They can be in the screen. I was like, okay, they're being weird. But anyway, I worked remotely for 3 years, so very used to headsets and table meetings.
All right, do you want to go ahead and wait for Francis, or is everyone okay with voting right now? Or I should say, does anyone want to wait for Francis? Say yes in the chat. That's 2 yeses. That's close enough. All right, we're gonna go ahead and wait, and in the meantime, I'm gonna try and modify the polling system. That way, once it does finish proper, it'll share all that information with you guys. Scott, are you helping Francis get on the call right now with all the information?
Did she just join, or did we lose somebody?
We lost somebody.
Okay.
Nithya said she was gonna exit and re-enter to try and get access back to the main thing. She was our call-in user number 2.
It's on her Google Calendar, right?
Yeah, she should have been invited to it. So
That's what I told her. So hopefully she'll be joining soon.
invite her to hop on now because we have gone past our time point for it by about 15 minutes. So if she doesn't hop on.
Wait, I have a quick question while we wait.
Go for it.
So I emailed, I think you, Scott, and Candace about this, but I've been getting an email from, I think, Hapcom's treasurer, and they're trying to edit their application, and they can't. And I think you tried to send them the application back, but it's not working. And they've emailed me twice, and I mean, I don't have access to the SurveyMonkey, so I don't know. Is there no way for clubs to go back and edit once submitted?
They should be able to.
Yeah,
Who's the person who submitted it?
Yang Chi. I don't know how to pronounce their name, but it's from Hapcom, and I'm pretty. This is the treasurer. Yeah.
Can you?
Yongjing. I think I forwarded the email to you as well.
Yeah. So what I did was I went to Monkey and I moved it back to the application stage and checked reopen application. So I feel like they should have had access to it. I don't know what else I would do to, reopen the application besides checking reopen application.
Yeah, yeah, it says last edited the 5th. It's not in the submitted stage. I'll go and log in as Yang and see what they see.
Okay.
And then I'll message you separately. How about that?
All right, sounds good. Also, they asked if the deadline was still set for tomorrow. I don't know if we're going to discuss that at some other point, but
we're going to discuss that later today during our discussion period.
Sounds good.
All right. If Francis doesn't get on within the next minute.
She's on right now.
Oh, she's on? Welcome, Francis.
Hi, sorry, I've been moving out.
You're fine. There are questions for you regarding information on the MOU with the retriever.
Uh-huh.
So I believe Scott and Nithya both have questions. We're going to turn over to Scott first and then go to Nithya.
Okay. Am I supposed to be able to see you, or?
No, some people have their cams on, some people don't.
Okay, that's fine. Just want to make sure.
Mic while you're not talking.
So there's been a discussion to just remove SGA from the MOU with the retriever. This is because we feel like it's kind of micromanaging and that there's not really any reason to stay in the MOU, that the retriever is able to make the edits in their own interest. So that's what was being talked about. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything. Do you have thoughts either way, Francis?
So my thoughts on this are that the MOU existed before me. I had no problem removing the language, but there is a reason why it was implemented last year, and it expires to my understanding next year, correct? Correct?
2021, right?
Yeah, so I felt just keeping it through another year and then it was going to end anyways, if that makes sense. So that was my thinking on that, is that making it amendable to the point where it is going to end in a year. And the purpose of it was to reduce reserves, and it's just a contract to make sure that happens. Regardless of you doing it on your own, it's just there. Sorry, I just been running all over the place. So you're saying to move away from the MOU for the reason of it not being applicable or not being necessary? What? Could you repeat what you said?
I don't think it's necessary, and since we just passed the budget, and I emailed it to sign for $60,000. So I think the MOU's purpose is to change the amount the retriever is budgeted in our budget, and that's already passed. So I don't understand.
The MOU is to really be decreasing their reserve spending, and is to increase the reserve spending and to make sure that there's a continuous increase in stipends for those workers. That's really what it's about. That's what that money is going to, at least.
I agree with that goal, but I don't think the MOU is the best way to do that. We could pass a JR saying SGA thinks that the retriever should pay people more, but I think it's ultimately up to them.
In my opinion, it already exists. It's going to go away anyways. I don't see a reason. I don't see a good, in my opinion, going off of good faith should have been in the initial decision. If Like, if JR was suitable, if a JR had been already approved, that's fine, but I don't see the point in doing away with it. It already exists. It's already being upheld. Don't touch something that's not broke, right? Just like they met the standards of the MOU. It's gonna end eventually. It's not like it's gonna end in 5 years. If it was gonna end in 5 years, I'd be comfortable with getting rid of the MOU. But in my opinion, it's already halfway through. And again, like you did say, pass the budget. So why not hold that money to that stipulation that it's already been passed?
All right. Any other questions for Francis? All right. Hearing. Oh, all right. No, all. Ooh. Oh, all right. Confused there for a second. All right. That being said, I'd like to move previous question to end debate. Second. All right, that works too. Are there any objections? Hearing no objections, the motion passes with general consent. Nithia's got her final comments in. Doesn't think it's necessary and essentially a collective understanding of good financial practice. Informal agreement that wasn't looked over by Senator Finance Board in the previous administration, which is true. All right, that being said, the two options here, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the JL. I'm going to pass amendments on it from there.
What, Candace?
If you're going to talk to Candace,
Is this the JL that was signed by Senate, or are you introducing a new JL?
This is the JL that was signed by Senate.
It has the wrong JL number.
That is correct.
So are you going to introduce a JL that has a wrong number?
My understanding was that we were going to amend it and send it back with the correct. The Senate can't do anything. Already passed it.
Okay.
Justin, can you please mute your mic?
Okay.
In Parley Pros, in the situation, if it was passed with the wrong information, then the next body up would have to send it back. But since we are currently the next body, not necessarily up, but in the stage of the process, it's our duty to send it back. But should we choose simply not to approve it here, we would still send it back to them with the amended changes so that they could update their records properly. It just wouldn't come back to us after that. If that makes sense. All right, that being said, we're going to introduce JL 18-1920, despite it being out of order, which is approval of the amended Retriever MOU. Your options before you now is if you would like to approve this MOU, you can move to approve, and with a second, we'll go into voting. If you don't believe that we should pass the legislation, simply don't say anything. After a certain amount of period, the legislation would die on the floor. With that being said, is there a motion regarding JL, or I'd like to move to amend JL 18-1920.
Second.
All right, I'd like to change the title or the joint legislation to JL 19 in fitting with the fact that the JL 18 has already been passed.
Second. Wait, what?
You're good. You're good. All right. I'd like to move to approve the amendments.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say yes in the chat.
Liam, if we were to remove the MOU entirely, that would be separate legislation, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right. All opposed, say no in the chat. All right. The amendments are passed. With that being said, is there a motion regarding JL 19-1920 as amended?
Move to approve JL-1920 as amended.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion fails. This piece of legislation will be remanded back to the Senate with with indication that it was not picked up by the Finance Board, but the Senate still must vote to approve the changes that were made. All right, moving on. Zane was supposed to call in, but he apparently has not. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce it anyway. If you guys head back to the agenda, we have JL 20-1920, which is approval of the termination of funding for the Performing Arts and Humanities Building MOU. So if everyone could go ahead and hop on that JL.
I can also talk about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, seeing as it's sponsored by Scott and Francis.
Yeah, I can talk to it too.
All right, I'll give deference over to Scott and then Francis. You'll each have 2 minutes to kind of explain the purpose of it. You're free to share those, or 3 minutes, and you're free to share those as you see fit. So you may go ahead and introduce the information behind JL 20-1920.
Mind if I start off, Francis?
Yes, that's fine.
So this MOU, or this legislation right here, basically says that it is okay for us to remove the $5,000 for the position that was not used this year in the budget. We just passed a budget with that in it. So this is just basically backup documentation saying that we're not going to fund the position and that the POB was notified that we're not going to fund the position. I don't think it's controversial at all.
Yeah, this is really purely based off of the fact that we haven't really received anything out of putting money towards this position, let alone there being uncertainty about the money we've already given them. So it's really a needless expense that we're getting rid of. We're not getting, but you know what I mean. Like,
are there any questions?
A question from Nithya. Where did the $50,000 go?
So that is something that Zane is still following up on. The most current information on that is that the money was transferred, and again, that money will not be spent. It is only there as a contingency in the event that there's some damage that occurs to POB, and that's when it would be spent. If that makes sense.
Or if you guys have the draft 6 of the budget for the 2021 up, it is the zeroing out of B108. Line item B108. Referenced in the spreadsheet of the budget. Actually, another question, did this pass the Senate because it is not filled out for the number of senators for or against?
No, it did not.
This is the first time it's being introduced.
Zane just introduced this today, so it was not passed.
The order doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. If there's no more questions, we're going to go ahead and move into discussion. Anyone want to start us off?
We just passed the budget, including this, so please pass this because it's basically for the same thing that we've already passed.
I agree, Nithya. I agree. All right. Any other questions? Or any other discussion points? All right. I'd like to move previous question.
Did you tell everyone that there's a poll? So there you go.
Well, everyone else has voted on it is why. So.
Oh, for the poll?
Yeah, everyone but Elise. Thanks to the stat details, it's really convenient. All right, we're going to close that. In the future, I'll have pre-prep polls for stuff like this and the quick information and things like that. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and formally introduce JL 20-1920. Is there a motion regarding JL 20-1920?
Move to approve JL 20-1920.
Is there a second?
And
All right. We're going to go ahead and do the roll call vote. So if you are for the legislation, say yes. If you are against the legislation, say no. Scott?
Yes.
Ryan?
yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Abdullah?
Yes.
Elise? Elise? Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
All right. So,
Yes.
Nithya? All right. 7 for, 0 against, 1 abstaining, 1 not present. The motion carries. We will send this off to the Senate for their review as well. All right. A little bit behind schedule, but that's okay. Up next on our agenda, we have a discussion block. So we have three main topics we need to discuss. The first thing is going to be Young. I believe it was requested by Justin that be placed on our agenda. So Justin, I will.
Oh, it's me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so last week me, Francis, and Zane had a discussion with Dr. Nancy Young, and it was basically about this new position for the advocate for intellectual sports. And what we got from the conversation is that this position is sort of happening no matter what. She's invited finance board to be a part of the search for this new coordinator, and that the reason that we weren't told about it sooner was just because she didn't know whether or not SJ would want to be a part of something like that. I think some of our initial concerns were overlooked, but essentially, intellectual sports, or at least the 13 that signed onto the petition, would be receiving sort of like an advisor who would be receiving sort of like an advisor slash treasurer in this new like employee for them, as in they'll like sort of handle all the travel arrangements as well as like talk to departments to like get funding for them. And I at the meeting expressed my concern about sort of the imbalance it would bring about, simply because I know earlier this year we voted to increase off-campus funding for intellectual sports, and sort of conference groups like NESB could barely get any funding. But Nancy Young was kind enough to say that if it's unfair, she'll be happy enough to take the criticism, and we can just send students her way. Francis, do you have anything to add?
So this conversation has been going on for longer than a month, in my opinion, I believe. I have been meeting with Dr. Young at each of one of these meetings, and of course, Justin was the one to attend this meeting. In my opinion, this is going to have serious effects on you, and that's what Justin conveyed to Dr. Young, and she was basically unbothered by it. So that's something to keep in mind, is that you guys really will have to look at this information for what it is and decide on your own. What does that mean for the future, specifically when it comes to budgets? Also, it also is a time where Dr. Young is being heavily used as she sits on the emergency committee. So communicating with her from here on out is definitely going to be difficult, because her number one priority is to focus on the obviously the crisis that's at hand. Overall, I think the meeting was informative, but we were also to enlighten her on certain things, such as the inclusivity aspect of this position and how the way that the position is going to be used is not necessarily inclusive of all things that SGA must be inclusive of by like nature. So I think it was a good conversation to relay our concerns and all that stuff, and it's a conversation to be continued, but I don't believe it'll be continued at this moment, again, with the priority being public health and safety.
I think when we do have budget meetings, though, I think it would be best if we did revisit maybe off-campus funding for competition and conferences, because I mean, basically, this new role is going to give intellectual sports sort of a little bit more of an edge over like groups that go to conferences. I mean, it seemed like Dr. Young's concern was more about sort of the networking potential of intellectual sports as well as alumni giving and recruitment for the school. And it was very much unfair towards like groups that do other off-campus stuff. So I like think we should revisit that when it comes time for budgets.
I just typed in the chat. Do you think it would be a good idea to invite Dr. Young to the off-campus budget meeting so she could give her input?
No.
No. So yeah, to give context on why we're saying no is because Dr. Young there would most likely impede the system, and I think efficiency is one of those things. Most likely when we discuss off-campus budgets, it'll be through an online WebEx meeting like this as well.
That's exactly what I just said, Liam.
Yeah, well, now I see the chat. But my main thing is also I don't want her to, by entering the conversation, to kind of dominate and control the conversation that would be occurring, especially when it comes to budgets. That's it's a role that we've been given, and I'd rather not give that up if that makes sense. But I think we could reach out to her for more information when things become available. But do you have any other more discussion topics or information from Dr. Young, or can we move on?
I just wanted to know. I just wanted to ask. I know. Is it too late to amend your agenda?
Nope.
Never.
Can I propose an amendment?
You can. You can move to amend.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to move to amend your agenda.
Make a motion to move to amend. You just.
I move to amend. I move to amend.
Second.
All right. Amendment.
I would like to basically get 10 minutes. I think that's all I need. 10 minutes on your agenda just to talk about all the information that I've been getting and things that I've been going over the last 2 days, just in regards to what's going on campus right now.
So the response to campus closure, that's next on our discussion list.
Oh, great. Okay, so then yeah, I have some stuff for that.
All right. Would you like to withdraw your motion at this time?
Yes, I withdraw my motion. I can't see the agenda. Is it somewhere?
Yeah, it's in the drive, and we put it in the chat.
I swear I have been looking for it. I have not been
It's
able
listed
to.
as 2020-03-12.
Share it in the chat for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That being said, we're going to move on to response to campus closure. So, as you know, the campus will officially be closed. On-campus apartments will not be available until apartments fixed, which means that for the next 4 meetings, 2 regular meetings and 2 special sessions, we are going to be having them through WebEx. During this time frame, we're still going to be discussing budgets. You won't have access to see the budgets on your SurveyMonkey until the Treasury Support Team completes their run-through and check of them. In response to the campus closure and the budget deadlines, what the official thing will be is we won't send out a blanket information on extending the deadline, but any organization that comes to us requesting an extension will be given one until next Wednesday. So if they ask for it, we will give it to them. But we're not going to put out a huge press release indicating that we're extending the deadline. We will put out something saying that if you need an extension, you can message the finance board or email the finance board to request that. And any extension that comes in, we will be giving it to them. But for the sake of, I don't want people waiting until the last day yet again to do it. So if we do it in this way, anyone who needs that time will be given that time. Anyone who submits late can submit a petition, and we will accept that until next Wednesday. But I don't want everyone waiting until next Wednesday to submit them. I want people who can try and submit them now to try and submit them now.
I kind of disagree with that. I think it would be better to an extension, especially since campus is actually closed today and tomorrow, which would have been days that they could have worked on it. So I already have kind of a prepared message. If you would like me to share my screen, you can see it, or I could drop a link in the chat.
If you could drop the link. My logic was that because campus is closed, they should have more time to work on it. But if I'm mistaken on that and the board thinks differently, then I'm willing to go the other way on that. But that was my logic.
Also with this release, I think it's important that the SGA website liaison links are kind of outdated with Abdullah not being on it and stuff. So if Justin, if you could update the liaison part of the website that so people to be able to reach out easier, that would be helpful.
I'd also like to add to, if you are going to extend it, what that means as far as groups using ECS, because should it be an extension on allowing them to have ECS? Have you talked to Britt and Matt about that? If it is an extension, if yes, you want to give groups more time to get their ECS fees, keep in mind that staff, like all campus is closed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So Britt, Matt, no one will be here next week. Just to make sure that it's clear what the extension is for. Is it just an extension to actually turn in? Okay, make sure that it clearly states if ECS is going to be involved in that or not. Personally, I don't know if it should be, given the fact that Britt hasn't been talking to you about that, and it's going to be hard to kind of make that happen. But just making sure we're very explicit in the communication that comes out of what is being extended.
When is Britt leaving as well?
The 28th.
I thought I saw the 23rd.
I saw the 23rd as well.
Yeah.
Meeting with her on the 23rd that she put on my calendar. Transition.
Who is that? I'm just
Justin.
I think it's Justin. Mute yourself, Justin.
You know what? That's the power of this. I can mute.
That's right. You can just mute people.
I would be fine with just a submission deadline on our end, the Wednesday, because the TST will not be looking until Thursday over spring break.
Yeah, this is Candace. I think you should extend the deadline. I think you should extend it like until April. Honestly, I think students have a lot going on right now. You all have a lot going on right now. You're packing, they're packing. They're trying to figure out if they can have a laptop, if they need a, like, how they're going to manage. There's a lot that they're managing, that you all are managing. And if you were able to give them the grace to say, you know what, we know you all are managing a lot. You're going to have to figure out how to keep your club going while not coming to campus. And with that, we're going to give you until like, I don't know, April 15th or something to turn these in. Like, I think that will give you all some breathing room as you figure out how to be students, be finance board members, support student orgs virtually, and it will give them some breathing room to figure out how to do some of that same stuff. I think it would go a long way for you and for them to really think about pushing it out.
Liam, you're paying attention to the chat, right?
I'm 100% paying attention to the
Okay.
chat.
Okay.
Don't worry. I think, yeah, I'm now in agreement that we should give an extension. Personally, just because of our timeline, if we do give an extension, I would prefer it to end in March as opposed to April, even though I know that it is a trying time. A decent amount of classes have gotten started in the budgets, and my worry too is that if we start on April 15th, we're giving ourselves a very limited time before we're voted out of office, or in terms of the SGA elections, since we only have a limited amount of time to pass these budgets. And although it's not written anywhere, I would prefer that we all do them before or unless we are lame duck representatives, simply because at that point it's not going to be there. And then I think clubs are going to be dealing with a lot, and not being able to know their budgets until even after their own e-board elections will probably be difficult for them as well. if we end up, not releasing budget information until May, because it does take us a significant amount of time.
Yeah, I think all that's fair.
I
I
think
just think, go ahead, Scott.
I think we can still do it in a rolling fashion where we look at the budgets that are submitted. I think the vast majority of budgets would have already been submitted by the deadline as it is. So we still have a bunch of information that we can work with, and then we can just clean up the rest of the budgets that come in or trickle in as they come. I don't think that would add too much to our work.
The virtue of the budget system is that we're able to see everything at the beginning. So I think the issue would be if we decide allocations, then a budget comes in at a certain point. My personal recommendation, and then I'll put in a straw poll on that, would be we can extend the budget deadline until the 20th or the 27th, in terms of there, and then make it very clear that there is a process for you to submit a petition to get your budget received afterwards, after that deadline, and then lock that down for maybe another week or so they have an additional week if they so need it. But as much as I do want to give clubs deference in terms of the work that they're doing and the stress that they're probably going through, at the same time, the longer we push the deadline back, the more work we're putting on ourselves. In terms of longer extended meetings, if we end up not being able to come back to campus on April 6th, which is still a rather high possibility, how online meetings are going to go in terms of time frames and extended work, because as efficient as we can be during meetings, online meetings will inevitably take longer based on the system that we're using. So because of that, I just want to make sure that we are servicing close, but I want you guys to keep yourselves in mind too of how much work on these budgets do you feasibly think you can get done before the elections happen the last week of April. So I'm going to go ahead and prep a poll. In the poll options, we will have extending the budget deadlines to the 20th, extending the budget deadlines to the 27th. And does anyone else have any other suggestions that they want to add in there? (31st). All right. I'll make this poll a multiple answer one, but please pick 2 at the most. Question will be new budget.
Is there any more discussion? Because I'm still kind of unsure of what to pick.
Well, this isn't an official thing. This is just a straw poll to see where we're going in terms of longer or sooner. But if you guys would like to have more discussion, I'm completely open to that too. It gives you more time to write the question.
I added in the chat too. I know someone had asked this, but there's 50 that have been submitted so far and 56 that are still in progress, if that helps one way or the other.
I still agree with what Candace said. I think as I feel like we should be as accommodating as possible. I'm kind of concerned as there were less budget submitted than I thought for right now. So maybe a rolling admission would be kind of harder to do. But it's really crazy out there, and we have to do everything we can on our end to support orgs. And we just have to figure out what that means.
To be fair, this is around the amount of budgets we had submitted around this time last year. In both of them, I want to say at least
Even the last day, yeah.
40% came in on the last day, 40 if not 50%.
I think if it's going to be an extension too, it's for the 56 that are obviously still in progress, right? Seeing what groups those are, seeing what help they need, kind of analyzing it after tomorrow night, maybe on Saturday, to see how many still haven't been submitted, and working from there. If we do extend to April, keep in mind that renewal and elections for most orgs start April 15th. As far as additional stresses that student org leaders might be having too. If you make an extension to be in March, you can always extend it again. That's all I have to add right now.
Any other discussion points or suggestions right now for suggestions. Your RA. All right, the extension that we have is extending it to the 20th, which is next Friday, extending it to the 27th, which is 2 Fridays from now, extending it to the 31st, which is the last day of March, and extending it to sometime in April. And then Ilsa, your suggestion was read and heard. And once we do a vote on the budget deadline, we can do another vote on when we can allow petitions to go up until.
I'm thinking about if we did the petition option in that meeting in between, like where half the people have submitted and half the people haven't, how would we sort of handle, like how would we ensure that we're not like giving preference to certain budgets or something like that?
That's the main issue that we're going to deal with in terms of if we have the extension line, how far it's going to go for what events. And because we really need to have all the events, and that's the virtue of the budget system, which is why I'm kind of against having the petition or the rolling deadline. That essentially turns us into the system that we had last year. And if there's anything that we gained from just the first 2 meetings of the budget cycle this year with SurveyMonkey, it's that we were looking at 4 events and a limited amount of pot, a limited amount in the finance board pot, excuse me, and had to kind of look at how we were going to divide those funds up. And if after 2 meetings, a third one or a fourth one suddenly appears that we weren't expecting, that kind of changes everyone else's funding too, since we base it off of how many applications and how much we have. That's personally why I'm against that. But if anyone else has any discussion things or things they'd like to counter that, I'm again open to hear all kinds of suggestions.
I think that you all should take a route that's going to make it so you have the least bias, if that makes sense. Like we've said multiple times, orgs have a lot that they're going through right now. And to be fair, this is probably one of their lower priorities. I wouldn't want to see orgs submitting later after you let them, and then you all kind of like, oh, well, they submitted late, or having that kind of mentality towards it, or if they petition because they submit later. So I think whatever's going to keep you all completely fair on no matter when the budgets come in was going to be the best route, because this is a time that we have to take a lot of empathy and understand that some priorities are going to be a lot different for other people. Just because you are the finance board doesn't mean everyone else has that same mindset.
I agree.
I don't think that it would turn it into the old system, because just having it as the new system, we would still vote on everything together. We would just go through and look at the individual events to see if they meet our standards and strike the ones that, like our general body meetings, or are over the cap. And that would still allow us to prepare the information that we have in front of us and see how much we're spending and prepare for cuts that we would have to make, but and not like completely derail the process. I think we would still be able to do the work that we have when we have it, even if we extend the deadline.
Understood. Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and do a straw poll kind of to see where everyone is right now. And then from there we can start narrowing down some of our decision choices. So, poll is
So I just have a
open.
question for you, Liam, after you go through this, just for you.
Yep. So the poll is open. 4 options. They're listed there. 20th, the 27th, the 31st, and then sometime in April. Please input a response. If you are ex officio, your votes also count during this phase 2, and I personally would like to see them. I can check who has voted where, so don't worry about that. Francis, go ahead.
So my question, if I'm understanding this correctly, if you extend the budgets per se till the 20th, right? Does that mean you won't look at, like, so you're obviously not having a meeting during spring break, so that would obviously put you right at spring break. So then you would be done and ready to look at budgets on the 23rd, correct? I mean, the 24th.
That would depend on the speed of the treasurer support team.
Okay. So, but
ESP has to look over everything first.
Okay, so if they look everything over during spring break, you would be able to still look at stuff possibly that week, or even you're already pushing it back a week anyways, probably. So it would be the last week of March is when you would start looking at budgets, if I'm understanding correct. Okay.
Assume that 1 week after the budget submission would be when we would be able to start looking at them. I want to.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to understand.
After this one real quick, we're gonna wait till the poll runs out. 1 minute.
Am I ex officio? Can I vote?
Or ex officio, you can vote.
Done.
Everyone here can vote, but
Oh yeah, Julia is ex officio. Yeah, Julia.
apologies, I'm back. We're gonna go ahead and close the forum. Let me see who hasn't finished yet. All right. We're gonna go ahead and close the poll. I have to wait 20 seconds for it to close. All right. So we have 6 people who think next Friday, 3 people for 2 Fridays from now, 4 people for the 31st, and then 1 person for sometime in April. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and look at doing it, setting the deadline out to the 20th, which is next Friday. After that, we would give the TST a week to do their stuff. But as we continue on this, I would like to ask you guys, even though I'm personally against it, would we want to give clubs the ability to request an extension and then to when? So can I get some thoughts on that before I open up the poll? Ryan says no. And this is no.
Repeat.
This is for the extension.
What about it?
Would we want to have an extension available or not? Or give most likely a deference for extension. So if you couldn't submit it by the 20th, you could, there's a system in place and a clause where you can petition the finance board to hear your application late. And would we want to allow clubs to do that? Elise, you said I agree. Do you agree with Nithya or to Ryan? Sorry. All right. It looks like the general consensus is leaning towards no. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and proceed with extending the deadline 1 week to March 20th. During the time of spring break, I will encourage you guys all to have open office hours using either WebEx or Google Hangouts and emailing your organizations, letting them know that you're going to help them out through this difficult time period in terms of submitting applications. Does anyone have any objections to that final decision? All right.
What is the deadline that we agreed upon?
March 20th. Next Friday.
I'm gonna put the link in the chat again. I'm gonna throw this in the treasurer group on my UBC. You guys want to review?
Understood.
Any edits?
open it up and add in suggestions. We'll have it sent out by 5 p.m. today. Does that sound good? All right, Francis, your 10 minutes. Go.
Wait, I have a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You're sending out an email to all of the clubs already, so we don't have to send an email out as liaisons to tell the clubs they're getting an extension of a week? Or should that be a separate?
This is not an email. This is a post on the treasurer group on my UMBC. So you could still send an email.
Objection from Nithya. Does anyone else have an objection? All right, Nithya, can you please state the tenets for your objection? Also, Francis, just want to make sure that you are indeed ready to go for your 10 minutes. Then after that, I'll do a quick spiel on cancel.
My laptop's about to die, but I'm ready. That's why I've been running around, sorry. Okay. I'm ready when you are.
All right.
Can I go now or?
1 second. I understand your point, Nithya. I think we are asking a lot of clubs at the current moment, but considering that it is technically going to be a spring break period, clubs should be semi-prepared for it. I don't really have much in terms of response, but if no one else has any objections, unfortunately, democracy wins out. The time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Francis.
Hello, everyone. I understand it's a very difficult and calming time in a sense, because we don't have classes right now, but it also is a time where everyone's transitioning home if they are residents, and there's been a lot of concerns that have been echoed either to me or people I have talked to, and I just wanted to address some of those concerns, whether or not you have brought them up. And just to let you know that the university is working towards these problems. So I just received an email. So some of the concerns that have been raised include the reimbursement for housing and dining services. Being as you are moved out of your residence, they are actively working on this with the USM and what that looks like and how that will go about. So if for students who are concerned about force majeure, I know there's a lot of talk about that. And for students who financially need to be aware of what's going to happen for the rest of the semester, they are looking into that. So it's good to be aware of the fact that they are they understand this is an academic and financial concern entirely and unsettling. And that is why they are reaching out to the various leaders on campus to get this feedback. So I think it's good that I'm being talked to about this and learning about the information that's being provided. Student employees is another topic that's been constantly brought up. The campus will remain open for business during the period of online instruction. So from the 23rd to April 5th, after spring break, student employees have the ability to work in continuity and safely. We understand it also has to be understood that certain employees may have their shifts canceled at that time. They are seeking guidance from the USM again. So this is not just a UMBC thing. This is a University System of Maryland thing. A lot of schools in the system are dealing with this right now. So they're trying to come up with a unified response to applicable in some sense to every university. The next issue that's been going on is the automatic concern of students not having the ability to have online instruction, and what does that look like for them. They're currently determining what that looks like with Do It, and the Division of Undergraduate Academic Affairs is working to individually contact students who are experiencing such challenges, and also the Academic Success Center is preparing to assist students who need it. But again, I think the most important thing is that UMBC is working every day to adhere to these major concerns, financial, academic, etc., and they're listening. You know, it's not like no one's listening. They're listening. They're just trying to come up with proper responses because you don't want this to be done hastily and then not be a solution for all, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to address those concerns because I know students have been worried about it. The number one priority right now for the next 2 days is to get students off campus. So, okay, that's all I had to say. If there's any questions, please let me know.
That being said, any questions? All right. If you have any additional questions afterwards, feel free to follow up on the Slack or via email with Francis. I'm sure she'll be willing to help you out. Final thing we have on our agenda is canceled events. So every event from basically then until April 6th, all those events have been canceled. Oh, yes, Nithya?
Is this for me? Yes, College Park is in class today. That was a decision based off of every school. As you know, Towson closed yesterday. The USM recommended that campuses close this week. Whether or not they closed this week was still left up to the president of the individual schools. So UMBC did decide to cancel classes today and tomorrow. That was a UMBC decision.
All right. There's a motion to reopen debate and there's a second. Are there any objections? There are no objections. We are going to go ahead and resume debate. Nithya being the one to reopen it, you have the first word. Listen very carefully. You can almost hear the fingers typing. There's a motion to have another straw poll where 2 dates available are March 20th and March 31st, and so those were the 2 dates that had the majority votes. There's a second. All in favor, please type yes in the chat now. All opposed, please type no in the chat now. Four for, 3 against. I must abstain. Therefore, we're going to go ahead and reopen for another vote. All right, we're going to go ahead and open up the poll. All ex officio members are again free to respond during this time frame. No, you don't count as ex officio, Dean, sorry.
Oh, Dean.
Dean's been lurking. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Francis, you are fine. You can head out.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I do need to take care of some other stuff that's going on, obviously. Again, if you have questions on updates, I have a meeting tomorrow, so hopefully I'll be able to send something on Slack tomorrow. And just always be informed, like if you have questions throughout spring break, I know I'm going to be in constant communication with the crisis emergency team, so that's good. Yeah, all right.
All right, we're going to go ahead, check who has not done it yet. All right, we're gonna go ahead and end the poll. I'm pulling up some stuff. We're waiting for final responses to be submitted in discussion on this. I'm just going to prep for the next one. It'll be in terms of the canceled events. The poll was single select option only for this one. So with a vote of 6-4, the budget deadline will remain on the 20th, which is next Friday.
Move to make this vote binding.
Say again.
Move to make this vote binding.
Seconded. All in favor, please type yes in the chat now. All opposed, please type no. Um, 5-2, the yeses have it, and this poll is now binding. All right, with that being said, we're going to continue moving on to our canceled events. So yeah, every event between now and April 6th has been canceled. At this time, SABSC is currently freezing the accounts that we've funded this club's organization, so they cannot spend that money. As you may have received it, but you may not. Dr. Brittany Brown sent out an email regarding the situation. So all student orgs that had plans to travel in the coming weeks, those plans have been canceled. All non-essential state-supported travel is prohibited at this time, which includes any travel by UMBC organizations that receive funding from the finance board. So if any of your organizations have had events that are supposed to travel between now and April 6th, those are going to be canceled. Should the advisor or should the club decide to go anyway, the SGA Finance Board's funds will not be used to reimburse them. Instead, they will come back to the finance board. So essentially, we can't condone the reimbursement of funds for an event that was strictly prohibited, that the university didn't let happen. In terms of that, I've spoken with Britt Spears once this information passed, and Director Bowling sent out a message in terms of that, and or Associate Director Bowling sent out a message. Scott, go ahead.
So items that were bought for an event that was going to happen, but is not going to happen any longer, cannot be reimbursed now?
So first of all, the items should have been bought through SABSC. But if the items were bought prior to the announcement of events ending the university closing, then we will allow reimbursement on that. Okay. This is more so for, say, for example, Moot Court had an off-campus competition that we gave, say, $1,000 for, and that competition was tomorrow. If that club decided to then leave and go on that competition and then come back and file the reimbursement receipts for hotel, travel, and stuff, we would not honor those because they were forbidden from going.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I spoke with Britt Spears. What they're going to work on is rescheduling those events once we find a definitive time when the campus stays open or reopens. Britt Spears will make appointments available to meet with the organizations whose events were canceled or postponed during that time frame to ideally reschedule them to another date. If the rescheduling is not possible for the event, then the funds will simply return back to the finance board, and they will go into the reserves at that point. So an official notice was sent out by Matt Bowling, and I can go ahead and pull it up now. We sent this to every club that had an event during this time frame, which is in light of recent university communication regarding the cancellation of on-campus events. Reach out today to clarify this will include events scheduled for today, and this was for yesterday. More information will be forthcoming when it becomes available concerning rescheduling next steps, but at this time, they're not going to go ahead and proceed with your scheduled reservations. This is an email sent to me by a club president in an image form, so I don't have the availability for that, but I will send that in the Slack once I get the chance. So basically, that's what I'm doing. If clubs ask about their events, simply tell them that hold off on anything And eventually, once a directive comes down from Event Conference Services, that'll be what we go with. And we'll get an advanced copy of that to send out to clubs before it goes public. But their office is still scrambling to make that final decision and send that out. So that's what we'll be doing as well once we get the information. But for now, if clubs ask you, simply tell them to wait for the ECS statement, but don't assume or anything on their behalf in terms of when something might happen, because we don't know how long this is going to last. Are there any questions? All right, hearing no questions, are there any announcements? I know we're about an hour behind schedule, but
Yes.
anything that anyone wants to say? Justin,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So I with Candace about this yesterday. Because we extended the deadline back a little bit, this isn't a requirement, but for all liaisons, like, if you could like email out clubs like maybe a time window where you could do like a Google Hangouts or have some type of virtual hours worth, like that would be probably a huge help for a lot of them, because like we've discussed, they are going through a lot. So if you could just like sort of make time or schedule out just a small piece of your week and basically say, hey, if you need any help with your budget, like you can email me here, you can Google Hangout with me, or you can do WebEx, just anything to get in contact with them would really appreciate it.
Any other announcements?
I have two, one of which being on Saturday, I can run a report to see what groups still haven't submitted, because I know we think that a lot are probably going to submit tomorrow still, just so we can see which ones are still in process to actually reach out. And I can send that out to Finance Board this weekend so that we know who might need some extra help. Maybe they started one and we're actually going to submit it, that type of thing. Also, if you are going to be meeting, please use Google Hangouts instead of WebEx, mainly because I know you all are set up with WebEx, but that doesn't mean all the students are. And tech would rather you be using Google Hangouts so we don't crash the WebEx servers. So when we have bigger meetings like this, definitely WebEx, but it's one-on-one. Please be using Google Hangouts instead of WebEx.
All right, the advisor has spoken. So the last part would be that if you're doing one-on-one meetings with clubs and organizations, or it's simply you talking to like 2 or 3 board members, we'd prefer that you use Google Hangouts as opposed to WebEx, because we don't want to crash the WebEx service for some of the bigger meetings that'll be happening during the time frame. But for larger meetings, such as finance board meetings, we will still be using WebEx as the main form of communication. All right. Announcements on my end. If you haven't downloaded the WebEx for desktop, please do that right away. All future meetings will be held through WebEx. Within the next week or so, you will receive an email from me based on WebEx etiquette in terms of how we will go through proper voting, how we will do roll call votes, recording information, mic procedures, and then shorthand that we'll use in the chat to indicate. Everything with the express intent purpose of make sure that we can speed things up while still following proper parliamentary procedure. So be on the lookout for that. Any final announcements? All right, Nithya, go off, I guess. With that being said, I adjourn this meeting at 4:01 p.m. I recognize that Justin is present, Scott is present, Ryan is present, Abdullah is present, Dean is present, Elise is present, Ilse is present, Nithya is present, along with 2 of our advisors, and Julie Arbutus, who stayed the entire time. All right, we're going to go ahead and do pass the gavel. Scott is present, Justin. Nice. All right. We're going to go ahead and do pass the gavel. Who wants to start us off?
Can we stop recording? Are we still recording?
We are no longer recording.